Hello, this is Matt Singer. I'm the Arts and Culture Editor at Willamette Week, and today I am speaking with Jake Silberman, local Portland comic, occasional Willamette Week freelancer, and full disclosure, my neighbor, practically next door. But he is not next door right now. He is in New York City. Jake, maybe you could quickly explain what you're doing in New York.
Yes, I am on a comedy tour in a van that I bought a few months ago. The idea was basically to shoot kind of a road trip documentary about comedy coming back across America. So yeah, I am in New York City currently. I left Portland about 3 weeks ago. And yeah, we've been filming all the different scenes that we've been going in. I've been doing club dates, bar shows, open mics, trying to show the full gamut of comedy. And it is back, as is America. I don't know what it's like in Portland still, but as soon as we left, the pandemic was not existing at all in any town we've been in. So I don't know if Portland is just the last holdover or what, but everywhere else, it's gone. COVID is gone, I guess.
So you hit the road. So where was like the first place you stopped in to? And you're doing sets along the way. You're
doing sets, but yeah, they're all different. Like I said, it's, like some of these smaller scenes don't have like shows every night, so we'll just do like their local open mic and meet the comics. So I can just list the towns we've been in. We were in Portland, Boise, Salt Lake, Denver, Omaha, Des Moines, Chicago, Indianapolis, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, New York City.
Wow.
And yeah.
So like, tell me about like that first show. So was that like the first like in a club stand-up show, like the one like on this tour that you've done in like a year?
No, I guess the official start of the tour was I did a weekend at Helium, Memorial Day weekend featuring there. But I had been back to Helium once, I think it was in September. They had like a brief opening. And so I was there. And then when they reopened again, I watched a show there. So I had been in a club in September. It was pretty dicey because obviously no one had the vaccine wasn't even out yet. So that was a little sketch, but I didn't get COVID. Everybody wore a mask for the most part. And, this Helium people did a pretty good job of like spacing everybody out and like creating airflow and stuff. So yeah, I have been doing comedy, mostly outdoor comedy, for a few months before we hit the road. But yeah, I have done a few indoor things before the tour.
So what have you found? What's been like the common thread then? If the idea was to sort of see what comedy looks like post-pandemic, what have you been seeing? What can you make sense of having done this now?
The weirdest thing for me is how quickly people have returned to normal life. Like my thought was that we would be going into different towns and different scenes, and we would be seeing like different levels of reopening. Like this club is only at 10, 20% or 25% or whatever. And, but then we go to the next town and it's fully open. But honestly, I mean, it's weird to say, but like since leaving Portland, like a few days after, like I have barely thought about the pandemic. Like I think Portland is like, it's one of the last holdouts because I've seen basically the entire country now. And almost everybody, it was like we would get into town like, oh yeah, we just got rid of the mask mandate and everything is open. So we just kind of were seeing every town right as they opened up. But as they opened up, people were just like, we were talking to people closely. We weren't wearing a mask. Like people for the most part, I think have been vaccinated. But yeah, so it's almost strange how quickly after such a hell of a year and a half almost, that it's just like this thing didn't even exist almost.
And what are you noticing about comedy now? Like, is everyone just doing like the same kind of general jokes about quarantine and what's happened last year, since we've all had this like universal experience together? Like, what does comedy look like now?
It seems like most comedians will open up with their set with like one or two jokes about the quarantine, but then since it's like such a common topic, you can't really like you can't like be on that for too long. So then they kind of just go back into their set. So even comedy seems to have like quickly like processed it, or people have been processing it the whole time. But yeah, like for my set, out of like a 20 or 25-minute set, I maybe have like a minute or two up top at most about like just like, because to me it's just more like, hey, we just have to acknowledge that we're like back in a room together. But like I think people are very, very quickly like ready to get out, ready to laugh. The crowds have been really fun. They've been, I think, really excited to be out at a club again. A lot of people come up to you and say like, this is the first show I've been in indoors since the pandemic kind of ended, quote unquote. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see this. But again, it's not like, I don't know, like I keep like, I'm 34. So I kept trying to like, the only event I could really think of was like 9/11. But 9/11 had a very like clear, like the event happened and then it was over and then we processed it. But because this has like gone on for so long and it doesn't really have like a clear ending, or like the ending is kind of just like petering out, it's not just a hard stop. You're kind of just getting this different thing where people are going back to normal. You know, you still see some masks in New York. There's a guy across the street right now walking down the street with a mask, and people wear them in the subway. But from Portland to New York, we've seen almost nobody wear masks in any public space.
Wow. And are you comfortable with that? I mean, you kind of threw yourself into the post-pandemic fire there. So I mean,
Right.
were you psychologically ready for that coming from Portland?
It took me like a day. Like when we got to Boise, our first stop, and we're like, wow, there's just no mask here. No one was wearing a mask. It wasn't a thing. I think they had just lifted their mandate. But we got to Boise and yeah, like I said, like I'm one of these people who it surprised me how quickly it turned. I was like, I maybe was hesitant for 5 or 10 minutes, like, oh man, okay. And then I was just like, all right, I guess if this is what people are doing, I'm fully vaccinated. I wasn't, I trust that the vaccines are doing their job. So I was just kind of like, all right, I guess this is what we've been working towards, to be out. And yeah, so far so good.
And has anything crazy happened? Is there anything that you've gotten on film that people will be surprised
Yes.
by?
Yeah, one thing, I'm Jewish and I wear a Star of David necklace outside of, like, I don't wear it in my shirt. I have been generally wearing it outside of my shirt, just because, with the recent Israeli Palestine stuff, there was starting to be a lot of anti-Semitism that I was noticing. So I wanted to I wanted it to be like out and proud, and I didn't want to feel weird about wearing it. So I wore it. And there was a guy in Denver. We've been doing a lot of man on the street interviews, especially at night, where people are out at the bars because we're trying to show that like bar scene is back and people are drunk, people are happy or whatever. But this guy was like arguing with another guy about like the Israeli Palestine thing for some god awful reason at 1 a.m. in the streets of Denver. And he noticed my chain and he started getting mad at me about, I don't know, he wanted us to talk about it while we were filming. And then, it was very confusing, but he kind of was very aggressive and we almost seemed like got in a fight. And then he was walking away. He kept calling me a Jew fuck, which was surprising. I don't know. I was like, maybe when I'm going to the South, I was like, oh, maybe I'll put the chain back in the shirt, but I wasn't really expecting that in Denver. But honestly, besides that, people have been extremely friendly. They've been very interested in what we're doing. And I think people are just ready to generally talk to people. So that was one bad thing that happened, but it's not very documentary. Like, every documentary has like this drama, and ours has been just like, wow, it's more been like a revelation. Like, wow, I guess the country's back. So it's a weird thing to try to like turn into a narrative, because the narrative seems to just be like, yep, people were ready and they did it, and now they're back. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to edit and put together and see what we have.